Over the past few decades, self-improvement has become one of the dominant themes of modern life. Books, podcasts, productivity systems, morning routines, mindset strategies. The message appears almost everywhere. Improve your habits, upgrade your thinking, optimize your life. And in many ways, the popularity of self-improvement makes sense. People want their lives to go well. They want to grow, to develop, to become more capable and thoughtful human beings. But something interesting happens when improvement becomes a cultural expectation. Gradually, the idea of improving yourself stops feeling optional. It begins to feel necessary. As if there's always another version of yourself you should be working towards, a slightly better mindset, a more refined routine, an upgraded version of who you are. And when the message is repeated constantly, it quietly shapes how we interpret our internal experiences. When moments of unease appear, the restlessness, a tension, a slight sense that something isn't quite settled yet, the surrounding culture offers a ready explanation. Something still must need improvement. Something must still need to be fixed. And so the response feels obvious. The work must still be done. More work needs to happen. You need to make another adjustment. You need to find a better mindset, the next insight, the next strategy that will finally resolve the feeling. And this is where something subtle begins to happen, because the culture around us doesn't offer improvement as an option. It quietly assumes that improvement is the solution to unease. So whenever the feeling appears, the conclusion already seems obvious. The work simply isn't finished yet. You can see this pattern almost everywhere. Advice about productivity, advice about mindset, advice about discipline, habits, and optimization. The underlying message is usually the same. If you're not feeling settled yet, there must be something about your approach that still needs adjustment. And so the project continues. You refine another habit, you test another strategy, you make another attempt to become that version of yourself that will finally feel okay. And again, none of this requires anyone being manipulative or dishonest. Most people sharing advice about growth are genuinely trying to help. But when an entire culture quietly assumes that unease needs to be solved, the project of self-improvement can expand indefinitely. There's always some improvement that needs to happen, some adjustment that you need to make, another version of yourself that you could work towards. And over time, something subtle happens. Improvement stops being something that supports life, and instead, your life starts to organize around improvement, as if there's always some further optimization that needs to be made. Attention turns towards what still needs correction, what still needs adjustment, what still needs work. And because unease inevitably appears again and again, the conclusion seems obvious. The work simply isn't finished yet. And this raises an interesting possibility. What if the culture of constant self-improvement isn't only responding to the unease? What if it's reinforcing the assumption that unease must inevitably mean that something is always wrong? And if that interpretation is considered normal, the project of fixing ourselves will inevitably seem endless. Not because people are failing, and not because growth itself is misguided, but because the assumption behind this entire project is rarely examined. And that assumption is that unease is a feeling that should disappear. If that assumption is mistaken, then the culture of self-improvement begins to look different. It begins to resemble a collective effort to solve a problem that doesn't actually exist. And if that's true, that raises a question that becomes increasingly interesting. And that is, what happens when this effort to eliminate unease becomes one of the central organizing forces of modern life? And that's something we'll continue to explore.